Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very, very well. Now this video is just going to be a little tribute to another great luminary of the kind of films we know and love. Genre, exploitation movies, gut-busting zombie marathons, cannibalistic capers, and grisly wartime actioners. Tisa Farrow, the younger sister of, I hate to use it, but the more well-known sister, Mia Farrow, sadly died a few days ago on January the 10th, 2024, unexpectedly and apparently in her sleep, so peacefully, in Rutland, Vermont. Now, it was Mia Farrow herself that put this onto Instagram and notified the world about what had happened. And it was a good friend of the channel, horror fan Andy, that let me know, because really speaking, no one's spoken about this and it hasn't been mentioned anywhere that I've seen. So, you know, everyone's going to go, well, she's overshadowed by Mia Farrow, of course, Rosemary and Rosemary's Baby, dalliances with Woody Allen and such like. Yeah, I don't want to use that phrase because I would far rather watch any of Tisa Farrow's movies than anything that Mia Farrow has done. And that includes Rosemary's Baby, which is a masterpiece, by the way. But she was 72 when she died. Now, she's about 5 or 6 years younger than Mia Farrow, and she's the youngest of seven. There's 7 siblings in the family. And she was born in 1951, and she's died at the age of 72, but we don't know the cause of death. Now, she's an interesting character as well because she followed in the family footsteps. Her father, John Farrow, co-wrote the Oscar-winning Around the World in 80 Days with David Niven. And her mother was Maureen O'Sullivan, who played Jane in the Johnny Weissmuller series of Tarzan movies. So that's quite a pedigree there already. And obviously, Mia Farrow went on to fame and glory and slight infamy as well. But Tisa Farrow entered into movies and she did a lot of stuff, a Vietnam sort of coming home sort of story called Homer, one of the first movies she ever did. She worked opposite Richard Pryor in an erotic mystery caper movie. Richard Pryor, yeah? I forgot what that was called. I think it's called, let me see, some call it Loving. She also did a film called Fingers, which is not an erotic movie at all, despite the title, with Harvey Keitel, and that was a crime drama. And she was in bit parts in many other movies, and then she took herself off to Europe, Italy, the splatter zone, and worked on 3 enormously cult favourite movies, which we all know and adore, and I've covered 2 of them a lot. One, of course, is Zombie Flesh Eaters, aka Zombie, aka Zombie 2, by that little gnome of gore, Lucio Fulci. She starred opposite Ian McCulloch and Al Cliver, and yes, that guy. Where am I? The Conquistador zombie. And she's great. She plays Anne Bowles in it. And her father's boat's drifted into the New York harbour with a zombie on board and blood and carnage and a dead harbour cop. And Ian McCulloch gets sent by Lucio Fulci in a cameo to go and find out what the hell's happened. But it turns out that it's actually her father's boat from the island of Matul. So off they go to Matul with another couple of adventurers and encounter zombies. And Richard Johnson meddling in things he shouldn't have meddled with. And it's a great splatter epic, and she's great in it as well. Now, although Mia Farrow had that little porcelain impish face, Tisa Farrow was a more comely sort of beauty with the most incredible eyes ever, truly. She did a Playboy semi-nude interview as well. When I say semi-nude interview, I don't mean she was sitting there semi-nude whilst being interviewed, but she posed for a few shots because she was a very attractive woman. After doing Zombie, or Zombie Flesh Eaters, she did, Anthropophagous, or Anthropophagous Beast, or Savage Island, or The Grim Reaper. These films have many different titles for Joe D'Amato, and which starred the great George Eastman or Luigi Montefiore, He was in so many Italian exploitation pics, all 18 feet tall of him. and he plays this cannibalistic survivor of a shipwreck who's on this Mediterranean island. And Tisa Farrow, her character, an American, basically she brings a lot of people to their deaths because she wants to go and visit this island, and can I go on your boat? And off they go. She's meant to meet another bunch of people there who turn out most of them are dead. And this Grim Reaper, Anthropophagous sort of character, George Eastman, is he's staked a claim on the island, and he's killed virtually everybody there and eaten them. And it's a notorious video nasty. It is very, very suspenseful, and she is marvellous in it. The effects aren't great. They're not. It became a video nasty. It was banned in the UK, along with the full uncut version of Zombie Flesh Eaters. In fact, every version of Zombie Flesh Eaters got banned for a while on home video. And but she's great in this movie. She powers most of the plot along. It's this very strenuous part that she's got, and she becomes like the final girl, and it's actually really, really exciting and fun to watch. The grueling, nasty bits, controversial at the time. I mean, there's a heavily pregnant woman in this movie, and Anthropophagous himself, well, let's just leave it to your imagination. But he plucks that baby out, and he's hungry. But it's a ludicrous sequence, to be perfectly honest. It's hard to be offended by things like this now, when the effects really aren't that good. But he also takes on a blind girl, and I found that the most distressing part. But as I say, the effects aren't particularly outstanding, so it's hard to be completely unhinged and disturbed by it. But Tisa Farrow is wonderful in it. She also did, for Antonio Margheriti, The Last Hunter with David Warbeck, who he'd gone from, he was a New Zealander, but had come to Britain, and he then went to Italy and made lots of movies for the Italians. And this is a guy that could have been James Bond. He was earmarked for it. But The Last Hunter is set in Vietnam, and I've covered Zombie Flesh Eaters a lot on the channel, and I've covered The Last Hunter extensively as well. And it's a great movie. It's all over the show. It's quite grueling and nasty in places. But Tisa Farrow plays an American photojournalist who's out there covering the war, and she's been assigned to this little squad behind the enemy lines, a platoon of grunts, and he meets up with them. He's on a special forces mission to take out a propaganda radio tower, and lots of twists and revelations ensue, but lots of gun battles, and she's great in this movie as well. And Tisa Farrow made her mark with just 3 movies on the genre that we know and love. She then took herself away from making movies altogether. And for a long time, if you read about these films and they mentioned Tisa Farrow, the sister of Mia Farrow, and they'd be forever linked. And even I've done it, but you can't really avoid it in this particular situation. But they'd say, well, what happened to Tisa Farrow? She just disappeared. She went off the map. What happened to her? Then you got all these stories saying that she became a cab driver in New York. Now, some of that may have been true. She may have done that. When she first started going out into acting, and she's getting bit parts here, there and everywhere, and getting turned down for a lot of other stuff, she said, I've had no advantages at all, which may have been like, well, my sister got all the advantages, I'm kind of forgotten about. But she kept plugging away at it, and as I say, she did some films about the 70s, and into 1980 with The Last Hunter, and then disappeared. Obviously turned her back on Hollywood. Whether she drove a cab or not, I don't know for definite. But what is true, she then spent almost 30 years as a nurse. So there you go. She gave herself to another career, which, how much more altruistic can you be? She spent almost 30 years saving people and looking after people. Fantastic. She married and got divorced, but she had two children, a boy and a girl. Sadly, her son Jason died in Iraq in 2008 or 2009, 2008 I think it was, and almost at the end of his second tour of Iraq, and under slightly mysterious circumstances, he didn't die in combat, There's no kind of action involved. But I think the autopsy said that he had, there was an antidepressant, a high level of antidepressants, which was given to people with PTSD. So I think there was some kind of controversy there. I don't know. Mia Farrow herself was massively opposed to any American foreign policy and involvement in the Middle East. And she was very vocal about it. And she basically said, it's like a kick in the stomach to lose him to this. Why did he have to go out? What are we doing over there? But Tisa, I think, kept very quiet about it. And obviously it shattered her. But she became a Gold Star mother. Now, if you don't know, Gold Star mothers are American mothers who've lost a son or a daughter in service to the American Armed Forces. It started after the First World War, but it's at any conflict. And even if your child has gone missing in action and there's no body recovered, you can still join, the Gold Star mothers, and you get your own uniform, you have your own ceremonial day, and lots of events and charitable functions. And she became a luminary of the Gold Star mothers. So, it's very definitely a sad loss, especially when you hear what her ambition was when she was 18 years old. I'll read this to you. This is what she said when she was 18 years old. I want to direct a great horror movie before I die. It will be shot in New York with vampires and Central Park in it, and I will be the star. 18 when she said that. Sadly, it never happened. Now, you can make up all sorts of conjecture, but maybe she'd been trying to tout this idea whilst making movies, and then she got to Italy, where you can pitch any idea, so long as there's gore and offal and eye violence, and maybe she tried to get this off the ground, and it just wasn't happening, and that could have been one of the reasons why she turned her back on Hollywood. Could be, I don't know. I wish we got to see that. I wish she got a chance to make that movie. She made a mark in the genre that we adore, and I'd love to have seen what she could have done with that. There was definitely talent in there, and at 18 to come up with that idea as well. On vampires, New York, Central Park. I wondered if she was inspired by Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, which of course was set in LA, of course, but vampires and sort of modern setting. So I don't know. But it is such a shame that she's gone. And 72 these days is nothing. So I've been playing the score for Anthropophagous, but let's go on to Zombie Flesh Eaters. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a bit there. There's lots of calypso sort of Caribbean stuff going on. And voodoo drums. And she is great in it. She unleashes some really horrific screams, especially in Zombie Flesh Eaters. But again, she's making out with Ian McCulloch, and they've already done this trick when they snuck onto the police cordoned off boat in the harbour, New York Harbour, Hudson, to try and find out what's going on. They've been snooping around, and a copper gets on board. He hears noises, so they quickly try to make out that they're just, they just snuck on board for a romantic tete-a-tete.
Yes, Doctor. What is all this about the dead coming back to life again?
Sorry, you heard Tisa's voice there.
I mean, what the hell's going on here?
Have you ever heard of voodoo?
Voodoo?
Anyway.
Doctor, you gotta be joking. That's kid stuff. I mean, voodoo is just plain superstitious horseshit.
Plain superstitious horseshit. But they make out to try and, throw the cop off the scent so they don't get arrested. And then when they get into the jungle, and, they've seen carnage aplenty, little Lucio gets them, look, have a snogging session in the midst of an old conquistador graveyard. And of course, hands like that come out the ground, and they grab Ian McCulloch's twisted ankle and start ripping through that, and they grab her by the back of the hair, and pull her head back, and her eyeballs pop out on stalks, and she unleashes this really horrible, mournful wail of a scream, and she does that a couple of times in the movie. But she's great. It is very definitely a sad loss. Lots of people went into the European movie making a lot of them drifted back to America or back to wherever they came from. It was like a little tour de force during the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. A lot of people, international stars, went and did this. It was almost like you've got to do this to further your career. It's great on your resume. You'll work with splatter and little argumentative Italian directors. It shows a bit of courage. And then they go back to, mainstream. But she never did. And it certainly wasn't because she was put off making movies because of her experiences there. Because I think she actually had quite good experiences. So, I don't know, but something definitely turned her away from getting in front of the camera again. Different career trajectory, different mindset. But she never made that movie, which is such a shame. So, Tisa Farrow, rest in peace, love. Rest in peace. You made 3 gut-munching, blood-splattering epics, and I love you for it. And I miss you. There you go. So I thought I'd make a little reference to this because I haven't seen anyone else do it. And it's not fair. All the big names get all the plaudits and all the recognition and tributes pour in. But this was a girl that grew up, in case that phrase, in the shadow, of an even more famous sister, but still tried to carve out her own path. And she did a different path than her sister, for certain. And then, of course, nursing. Now, Mia has written a fair, because I've read a bit of what she said about her sister, and she's obviously massively bereft and in terrible mourning about it and really upset. So they must have been close. They must have been close, and that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? So, folks, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to raise the bottle again. So if you've got it, raise it now. To Tisa Farrow, Teresa Magdalena. God. You made your mark, certainly. So, folks, I have been and always shall be Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, in this ever paying your respects in between time, please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic. And I'm going to see you all laters. We get a nice bit now as well. A nice send-off.